soon concerning the social credit score, the biometric world that is coming. It is called the Real ID. And the Real ID is not just going to be a new type of driver's license. It's going to integrate all aspects of American life, and the Real ID is going to be everywhere. I saw the Real ID come to Europe, and the British were infuriated because of how many privacy concerns they have. The Real ID will integrate your medical records. It will integrate your natal records, your date of birth, the basic things that we know we have to give. It will integrate your money, all financial information. It will integrate your offshore accounts. The Real ID will become so comprehensive, this identification method, that if you are American and you run off to Sweden and you get your little private suite retirement hidden Swiss bank account in Switzerland or something like that, your Real ID will track the flight that you take there. Celestial has left America and gone to Switzerland. She's going to be away from this date and will return to the United States on this date. And then when you go there and you buy yourself a soda, it will say that she swiped or she used her Real ID to buy this at this cafe. Her meal was a simple piece of lasagna and this type of drink. She stopped by this bank. She made this withdrawal. An American citizen has an external bank account in Jamaica and has money in Jamaica. And then the question will hit when you land back. Hello, Jerome, are you being taxed on that Jamaican bank account? It's going to be like that. And so I saw that when the Real ID came, it was not liked in Europe. It was strongly resisted. The French went totally to the streets against it. I saw that the British were much the same. Strong demonstration. In Australia, they tried something, what God was showing me, something like civil disobedience. They were just like, well, I'm not going to get it, am I? And then they thought that that would work against the coming of the beast system, and it did not work. And here in America, the Real ID had people standing up in line. I shared all this. It is called a new ID for America. I'll try and link it below. People were standing in these unbelievable lines of hundreds and thousands in all the states having to get it, probably because they will put some kind of ridiculous deadline on it, forcing people to get it. And so God is saying here that arms of the rescue services, even the fire department, he said, will be given emergency powers so that they can detain people and block them. People sent to their homes, and then spoilers will come in to spoil. And he says that it is the soldiers, it is the U.S. government, it is our own leaders that will be complicit in causing America to fall. And from that time onwards, America will have wars. So I have spoken that the United States is going to have a civil war, that every faction of the nation, transgender against straight and gay against straight and straight against each other, male against female, black against white, against the Asians, who will be against the Mexicans, who will be against whoever, children against elders, the government against the people against one another. All of it will happen. And God said that the fabric of America will become very worn thin like an old shirt and begin to rip until it culminates in a civil war, and the media is going to drive that civil war by simply bringing inflammatory content. Every time a black person fights a white person, every time a woman slaps a man, those things are going to be replayed, and those pundits are going to sit and just say, Marjorie, I just don't know how we've avoided a civil war this long. And you can already hear that they've been doing that. So they will continue doing that until one day the boiling pot that all the world is watching right now and wondering what is wrong with us, it is going to tip over. Spiritual hatred is going to come into people's hearts. I've shared in the old videos that I saw that 2 college roommates, young people, freshmen, were given a room to share, and one was from the alphabet life and the other wasn't, and they couldn't see eye to eye. And one of them went to the college housing office and said, I cannot share a room with that thing anymore. Couldn't call another human being and simply say, oh, Jared and I can't get along. I think it would be better for us to be rehoused. They went to the housing office and said, I cannot be expected to share a room with that thing. And that is what will happen. Spiritual hatred, spiritual madness upon the population until wars erupts. And then he says, from that day forward, when Babylon is falling, when the leaders have sold her, she will have wars, and wars are determined upon you until the eventual capture and sack of Babylon by the Russians. The Lord said people will be running every which way, every direction. Fathers will be distracted to the point that they will run away and leave their children behind because of the pressure of the moment and because of people shouting in the street. And so there's a curious story in the Bible about how Israel went off in yet another ill-advised war. It is never good to go and fight war against other people when you are currently in a period of sin. It is better to be in a current of worship under a King Josiah or King Hezekiah. And then you go and fight people because the hand of the Lord will favor you and you will come back victorious. But when you're in the midst of blatant sin, you're out here cutting people's body parts off and calling it gender reaffirming, whatever they call it, and just basically sanctioning everything that God hates. And then you want to go and fight people. It never works out well. Israel went off to do the same. She went against the Philistines, and the Philistines really rallied themselves that day. And their captain is a man that I highly respect. I respect what the Philistine captain said in the Bible. He told them that you know of these people. Conduct yourself like men, and fight for your women and your children. That was a pep talk and a half. And the Philistines were like, hoorah. And they went out and beat the living daylights out of Israel that day. And God had left them already because of their shenanigans. And they captured the ark. Now, what happened at home is that Eli the priest was sitting and he had not wanted them to take the Ark of the Covenant into battle. But these were people who idolatry had already started to creep in. And so they thought, no, we're going off to fight. And when we take the visible representation of God with us, then surely it will mean that God was in our midst. But God has a curious habit of leaving people in fake religion. He will let you keep the edifice. He let them take the box. He just went off and he was not with them. And the box was taken. And when Eli heard it, and heard the noise of the people shouting when they were coming back, he thought that that shouting was victory, but he anxiously inquired to know what it was. He heard the people shouting, but the shouts turned out to be shouts of dismay, because when the Ark of the Covenant is captured, they literally feel and experience Ichabod. God is left. The glory is gone. And so at the sound of the people shouting, Eli fell down and he was dead. And here is God using, for those who say that God does not speak with scripture. He always speaks with scripture here. But if you don't know it, then you won't know what he's saying. And you will think that there's no scripture in the prophecy. God says that in the pressure of the moment, when certain events happen here, and at the sound of the people shouting, fathers will run away and leave their children behind. And that is what war does. I shared in one of the recent videos about someone from the nation of Liberia who shared his story with me and told me that when he was an infant, rebels came upon their village suddenly, a sudden attack, just like Russia will suddenly attack. To those who think that they can fight Russia, when Russia comes at an unexpected time, when your gun is not in your hands. Rebels came suddenly, and they were sleeping. And at the sound of the people shouting, the noise of the attack, his family scattered. Everybody ran. The parents didn't run with the children. They didn't run as a cohesive unit with the bug-out bags that have protein bars and water in them. They just fled, because that is what instinct does. It will tell you, move or die. And he said that his mother had gone very far into the forest and had paused to catch her breath, and then realized that she left her baby back in the house sleeping on the mat. And now this woman had to pluck her courage and creep back through that forest, because no mother will leave an infant. She had to creep back through that forest and go and get that little boy. And he was telling the story as a grown man, not from memory, but from his mother's recollection of how she risked her life to save her infant child. And then the family had to wander to the next town and then look among all the displaced people, trying to find one another before they